works out well for us, it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, which we can send everybody the link on the list afterwards. My name is Crystal, and I am the North and South Central Regional Family Support Coordinator for CTFSN. CTFSN is a statewide organization that serves families throughout the lifespan. We do a lot of work with trainings and workshops like these and resources and referrals, and we do the best that we can to help our families in any way that they need. So I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping for us. I ask that everybody stays muted if the amount of people that signed up show up. There is a very large group, so it's helpful if we can all stay muted while the presenter is presenting, so that cuts down on the background noise. At the end, we will have a question and answer time, which we will ask everybody to raise their hand, and Rachel or I will ask you to unmute and ask your question. If you feel like that you have a question that is just dire that needs to be asked during the presentation, feel free to write it in the chat, even if you want to just remember it for later. If Rachel and I can answer it, we will do that for you. If it needs to be asked, we will do that. Otherwise, we will just ask it at the end. Let's see, there will be a survey that will be sent out at the end of the presentation. It would be so helpful to us if everybody could take a moment and answer those questions for us. It helps us to produce programs for our families in the future. We would appreciate that if you can get that survey filled out and sent back to us. I am going to hand it over to Rachel now so she can tell you a little bit about herself.
Good evening, everybody. I am Rachel Kiesler. I am the Family Support Coordinator for the Northwest and Southwest region in Connecticut for CTFSN. I've been with CTFSN for almost about a year now, and I just love it here. And I have a 10-year-old son with special needs and a 15-month-old little girl that is neurotypical. And we are so excited to have everybody here today, and we're so excited to have Ashley Cegelka from Autism Learning Partners, and she will be presenting this lovely workshop to you all today. So Ashley, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Ashley Cegelka. I work for Autism Learning Partners. So we are a statewide organization that works specifically with individuals with autism, ages 2 to 21. A little bit of my background is primarily in early intervention. So I have a lot of experience with Connecticut birth to 3, 2-year-olds up through 10 is really my biggest expertise. And done a lot of toileting. Before that, I was a preschool teacher. So toilet training, typically developing children, children with special needs. So yeah, so we're gonna get started. So just a little disclaimer that I wanted to get out of the way. I am not an expert. I have experience in a variety of different techniques, but that this information is really not meant to be child specific. So I don't really want, it's not designed to say that this is going to be a method that's going to work for every single child. Everything that I would recommend would still be individualized. And if you have a child, with special needs, I would just recommend referring to that child's clinical team, because they know best for your individual child. There are a variety of approaches in the literature. This is not all of them. These are not, this is not an exhaustive measure to all of the empirically supported approaches. And not all approach works best for every child. And that's the case with all individuals, right? So the key point here is to have your child evaluated by a professional who can tailor their approach to their specific needs. Everything that we do for all of our children is individualized. So today's objectives, just the importance of toilet training and toileting children, and what those common obstacles for children and their caregivers are. typical signs of readiness and some prerequisite skills that are vital before starting any type of toileting protocol. Preparation, different intervention methods, some generalization and maintenance. And then, like Crystal said, we'll open it up for some questions at the end. So the importance of toilet training for children, right? So we're looking at personal independence, their quality of life, obviously hygiene, self-confidence, and having more activities, more opportunities throughout their day, right? You're not, it's kind of a pivotal skill, right? You open a door for independence with hand washing or with dressing and undressing, you know, so there's a lot of other things that are kind of intertwined with such an important skill such as this. And it leaves more time for other learning and other activities and play. The importance for caregivers. So it's a common stressor to have a child who still is wearing diapers or pull-ups. It's expensive. You know, sometimes it's really difficult to have your child go to a childcare setting because they're over 3 years old or 5 years old and they still need diapers, and the childcare setting says, well, we don't change diapers for 5-year-olds. And that's a real barrier. That's a real obstacle because some of these children don't really have an option at that point. Dependence and time, right? So they're dependent on somebody caring for that particular need. And that's difficult, right? So parents have enough things on their plate where their child is dependent on them for, and then this is just another layer, constantly having to make sure that they're now changed and they're not sitting in soiled diapers. And so I said before, financial hardship. So it definitely becomes a priority for parents, and rightfully so, right? I mean, it's just another layer of things that your child needs you for long term. So there are some common challenges for toilet changing, training children with special needs. So sometimes our kiddos have some social impairments. So maybe they have delayed imitation. Maybe they're not as interested in using the potty when they see mommy or daddy using the potty. Maybe they're not socially motivated to use the toilet in a childcare setting or a school setting just because their peers are using the toilet. Whereas sometimes more neurotypical children have more of that social motivation. Again, not child specific, but the responsiveness maybe to that social praise. And sometimes there are social reinforcement barriers, right? So it's not just like, come on, let's go try the potty. And sometimes that's just not enough. Communication delays. So sometimes just a lack of understanding those expectations or those directions are sometimes a barrier. Sometimes there's limited cooperation. So sometimes there's just barriers in regards to being able to follow instructions or transitions, and just limited language, right? Communicating that I need to use the bathroom, that my diaper is soiled. Understanding what that direction of let's go use the potty even means. And then sometimes having some restricted and repetitive behaviors. So resistance to change, right? Sometimes these children have difficulty with transitioning from a preferred to a non-preferred activity. Using the toilet may not be a preferred activity. It's not a preferred activity for me, for most people, right? You have to stop doing what you want to do to use the bathroom. That's not fun. There's some anxiety, right? There may be some anxiety with using a public restroom, right? It's loud, there are echoes, it's foreign, there's a lot of people in there, I don't know who they are. It's different, right? So there's challenges with sameness. It's not my bathroom. It's not the bathroom that I'm used to. And again, some sort of rigidity with routines is somewhere along that same line where it's, you know, that soap is a different color, or this isn't my bathroom and this feels foreign to me. This makes me nervous. It's scary to me. Sensory issues. So sometimes children don't want to have their pants off. like the comfort of having a diaper. Sometimes just letting them run around in just underwear or a diaper is very challenging. I've even worked with some children where even shorts in the summer is challenging because of that sensory need to have pants on because it feels different to them and strange. Again, even like the echo in the bathroom, the sound of the toilet flushing, all of those things can cause some anxiety with some children. And motivational issues. So I don't really mind that my diaper is soiled. It doesn't bother me. I don't feel it. I don't really care to use the bathroom. What's in it for me? That's not an intrinsic value. That's not something that you're born understanding that you need to use the bathroom on the toilet and not in your diaper. We're not born with that instinctively. So there could be a lot of barriers making this much more challenging. So some signs of readiness. So typically, and I use that very lightly, these signs of readiness developmentally show anywhere between 18 and 3 months of age, but that's a very big range. And again, sometimes children with special needs don't necessarily demonstrate those typical signs of readiness. So a child may be chronologically 5 years old, but maybe developmentally 3 years old. And so, you know, at 3, you may not have been seeing those readiness signs, and that's okay. Some common indicators of possible readiness, you can tell that they're about to urinate or have a bowel movement. So maybe they start to make a face or they wiggle a little bit, their posture. So children maybe will start to touch themselves, or they'll crouch over, or they'll go to the same corner. If your child has regular bowel movements, so they're showing like a typical time of day where they're going. And the same thing with having urination in the diaper, right? So if you're noticing that they're having regular intervals of time where they're holding their bladder and then they're releasing their bladder in their diaper or in their pull-up, kind of showing that it's not like they're waiting for the liquid to come in and it immediately comes back out, and it's just like little bit here and there throughout the day. It's, I have a full bladder and I empty my bladder in my diaper or my pull-up. It's a little bit more difficult to tell using a diaper or a pull-up because it absorbs it. And you're not going to change your kid's pull-up every 15 minutes to make sure it stays dry. So that coincides with your child has intervals of time where they remain dry without a diaper. So maybe 30 minutes or 15 minutes, and you kind of can tell that they're starting to show some holding patterns. And then your child shows signs of being uncomfortable in their soiled diaper. So maybe as soon as they have a BM in their diaper, they want you to take it off. Believe it or not, sometimes fecal smearing is sometimes a sign of showing discomfort with a soiled diaper. So they put their hand in their diaper because they don't like the feeling of having a BM, and then they immediately pull their hand out and they realize it's dirty and they need to wipe it off. You know, so sometimes that does happen. And sometimes that's a sign that we need to move on to the next step. Not always, but sometimes. Your child shows signs of being uncomfortable, so they're stripping their clothes off, even if they're just wet, right? Or sometimes you'll see all of a sudden they were in a diaper and they just peed on the floor. And you're like, how did that just happen? Where did that come from? You were wearing a diaper. So starting to even recognize that they don't want to go in their diaper. This is just kind of anecdotal, but like I have a 3-year-old, and like I noticed that my daughter would be in the bathtub and she'd stand up and she would pee. And I'm like, you absolutely knew that you had to go. And it's interesting because it happens in the bathtub. You know, they're all of a sudden very aware of their bodies when they're naked in the bathtub or in the shower, or they look down, right? Because they're like, oh, wait, I know what I'm doing. So sometimes that's a sign, right? Because they can feel it and they feel that that's coming on. Oh, I already said that. And so sometimes if your child is not demonstrating these things and they're developmentally or chronologically at an age where, you know, and you've got all of these other barriers and you're like, I really need to start this. I really need to do this. It's okay, it can still be done. It can still be done if these typical signs of readiness have not been demonstrated. We can still move forward. So some prerequisites to consider, and I did touch on some of these already, but consider their developmental age versus chronological age. Do you already have a routine or a schedule that you follow along with your child during the day? So are they already following a visual schedule? Have you already set up times of day where, this happens particularly like in a childcare setting where, every 2 hours they're changing the child's diaper. So there's like a regular routine. Bathroom is regularly part of their day. Medical. So do they hold their bowels or hide when they're making a bowel movement? Are there any medical barriers to toileting? Sometimes digestion is an issue. Sometimes, we're obviously working with children of varying special needs. So we have to look specifically at, can they access the bathroom by themselves? Communication. What terminology are you going to use? It could be potty, toilet, bathroom. It could be some made up word. As long as it's consistent, it doesn't matter. If you're going to say, do you have to go pee pee? Do you have to go tinkle? Do you have to go wee wee? It doesn't matter what you call it. Just make sure that when you start with that term, you continue with that term. And people who are working with your child should use the same terminology. That consistency with communication is vital. Everybody should know how to communicate with your child, what their expectation is, and your child should understand from everybody who's working with them what they're trying to say. Does your child have a means to communicate to use the bathroom? Doesn't matter what it is. Pointing, can they say it? Do they engage in picture exchange communication? Use a communication device, a sign, a picture icon. It doesn't matter how they need to communicate. Communication is communication. And again, whatever that means, whatever their means is, we need to make sure that it's consistently carried over across all people that work and interact with your child. And does your child understand first then language? I know this is something that I use a lot. Okay, first go potty, then you get your, whatever. If they don't understand that contingency, it's really difficult to move on to the next step. So you can use a visual for that. It should be practiced throughout other opportunities of learning for your child. So it doesn't have to just be used with toileting. But I do think that that's really helpful in moving on to making this more routine-based for your child. And then behavioral. So how does your child do with transitions from preferred to non-preferred tasks? Is this going to be highly aversive for them to put their train down to go use the bathroom? And are you going to have kicking and screaming the whole way there? Those transitions may be something to consider working on with other maybe less non-preferred, if that makes sense, or potentially aversive things. Does your child have defined rewards or reinforcers that you can use for other skills? So say you have a staff that's working with your child and they say, my kid will work great, will do just about anything for that iPad. Okay. Are there other things? Are there other things that your child is willing to work for? Can we look at other potential rewards? Because that's also demonstrating that they already kind of understand that first then concept. Like, okay, first clean up your toys and you can have your iPad. That's the beginning of understanding that contingency. Are there any aversions to the bathroom stimuli or routines? Are they terrified of the bathroom? If they are, we need to start there, right? We can't force a child to go to the bathroom on every 15 minutes or whatever it may end up being if they're terrified to walk in the door. That's a whole nother step before we get started. So that's a really important thing to consider. How does your child handle bathroom changes, right? Like being without a diaper, being without pants, right? Are they having a tantrum as soon as that diaper is removed until you put it back on again? Again, how well are they going to do when that diaper is not available anymore, or when you have to remove the diaper to have them sit on the toilet. If they're really upset about not having that diaper on, it's not going to go very well. So again, we would need to start there, just having them start to tolerate being without it for a certain period of time without any other expectation of them. And then physical prerequisites. Again, it doesn't mean that a child that has a physical disability cannot be toilet trained. It just means that we have to plan for those accommodations ahead of time. So can your child access the bathroom independently? There's no barriers. If they typically spend their time in the playroom and there's always a gate between them and the bathroom, that gate is going to need to be removed permanently, right? Like, we can't have it up there anymore. They're going to need to always be able to access that while they're in the training process and once they're toilet trained. Otherwise, that's not going to be something that they're going to be able to generalize to their natural environment, because their natural environment contains a barrier. Can your child pull up and down their own pants, or at least assist with the task or understand, right? So, again, a child with a physical disability, it doesn't mean if they can't pull up and down their pants that they can't ever be toilet trained, but it does mean that the independence of that task will still require another person. So is there some type of modification that we could make? If, from a fine motor standpoint, that's very difficult. I would get a size bigger pants and make sure that that child has very loose elastic waist pants that are a size bigger. So, grasping the waistband or having to untie, no buttons, no snaps, no zips. If you're working with a child who has some fine motor deficits. Can your child access the toilet on their own? So step stools, having a child-sized toilet, a potty seat. So again, having all of those things established before starting the protocol. And then decide, are you going to have your child sit? Are you going to have them stand if they're a boy? There's no right or wrong answer, just whatever everybody's comfortable with. Start off with that. Just remember, little boys don't know how to aim. So sometimes having them sit is far easier than having them stand and all of a sudden look the other way and your bathroom is covered. So just a little tidbit of advice there. Also, I think if you're not already overwhelmed by all of the information that I've given, I think this is the most important part. Caregiver considerations. This is a lot. It's a lot of work, and it is not easy, and it's not quick. So please do not start toilet training right before some big life event. Moving, bringing a new baby into the home, taking a vacation, any other stressful event that you can anticipate. What ends up happening is the process gets started and likely something happens, like, oh, we brought a new baby into the home, and life happens and mom and dad are not on top of it as much as they could before, because they just can't be. Before moving, all of a sudden that child's whole world got turned upside down in a new home. So having the pressure of needing to generalize that skill to a new place, or maybe having outside stressors, makes this, they're already kind of feeling like and this is not, behavior analytic or anything, but that losing that sense of control, right? And now we're going to be taking a lot more control away from them by having them sit on a routine, taking away their comfort diaper, all of these things, too many changes at once, is just generally not suggested. Don't push your child too fast. There's no timeline. There's no timeline for toileting. Nobody says, the toilet training in a day. I don't believe it. Maybe it works. Maybe it works for some people, but that may be the exception, not the rule. Some children do very, very well. Some children take more time, and everything that they're learning is on their time. And we just go along for the ride and we let them figure it out. And try not to punish or get frustrated with those inevitable mistakes. They're supposed to happen. They're learning. This is something that, again, doesn't come comes naturally to void in their diaper or go when the urge comes, right? And so we don't want to associate any type of shame. They're not required to clean it up. It's not, oh no, you had another accident. We really just try to move past it. Okay, let's change you up. And that's it. We just move on. Don't draw too much attention to it. Always provide encouragement and praise when they're successful, when they sit, when they transition. You may, if they just tolerate not having their diaper on at all, that's a win, right? Depending on where you're starting, we're going to meet them where they're at, and we're going to reinforce them and reward them right where they need to be. Conduct preference assessments. So, and what this really means is make sure they actually want what you're offering. So if you say, come sit on the potty and I'll give you a sticker, and they could say, I could care less about a sticker, it's not going to work, right? So just because we think a sticker is going to get them to use the potty, if they don't really want that thing, it's not going to work. So we need to kind of assess what that's going to be beforehand. And this is the big thing. Are you ready? Do you have time to commit? Are you able to start this and not stop until they're fluent? That may take a week. That may take 6 months. And once you start, it's really not recommended to stop, because we're sending a signal of, well, what is my expectation, mom or dad? Like, am I supposed to pee on the potty? Am I supposed to wear the diaper? And especially if you're working with a neurodiverse child, those inconsistencies, that gray area is really more challenging. Are other people and caregivers in your child's life on board? And that's everybody. You're going to grandma's house, you're going to school, you're going to daycare. Is everybody willing to participate and be consistent with this for your child? It will be faster and it will be more successful if everybody's on the same page. And are you experiencing outside stressors? Do you have the time to be relaxed and engaged with your child and not be set back by those accidents? So, if you're really stressed about a project and you're just like, oh, I just did laundry and now you just soiled through all of this underwear and I don't have time to do the laundry. Those things, they get projected to your child inadvertently, but they do. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with you if it happens, even if you set yourself up for success in the beginning. Everybody here is a human. And if everybody here is a parent, and if it happens, we're all human and it's okay. But I'm just trying to say, just have those things in the back of your mind and consider them for the success of what you're trying to accomplish for your child. Again, I feel very strongly about this, so I'm throwing one more slide in there, but are you ready? Is this your top priority? Do you have time to commit? And is this the thing that, this is something that's come up a lot with some of the children that I'm working with now too, is if your child is getting services, is this a period of time where you feel comfortable kind of letting the other things that your child is working on take the back burner? And I think that that's kind of the takeaway here is, obviously things like speech and transitions and things like that are going to be carried over and generalized throughout. But once your child is really working on transitioning, maybe every 15 minutes to the toilet, and you have a 3-hour therapy session or a 2-hour therapy session for your child, a lot of time is spent in the bathroom. And that's okay, it's supposed to be. But I think if you're like, I really want my kid to, do X, Y, and Z, and we need to make sure that they're, spending an hour, every session playing, and I also want to work on feeding, and I also want to work on this, and I also want to work on sleep. If there's too many things that are going on at once, having your child use the bathroom every 15 minutes is going to take away from the time of something else. So I think understanding that some other things are definitely going to need to be backed up a little bit is just important to recognize beforehand. And those priorities will be back again. They don't go away. So I know that this slide is busy, but my intention was if you needed to, you could take a picture or a screenshot of it, because I think while none of these things are absolutely vital, were children toilet trained without all of these fancy things? Yes. This is simply from my experience, just some of the things that are helpful to have readily available. I was toilet training another child the other day, and we're at the underwear stage, and mom was like, I didn't really realize how much underwear I needed to have. And she's like, I gotta go get some. And she like ran out like an emergency basis to get a whole bunch more underwear, because you don't really want to have to do laundry every single day for like teeny tiny little underwear that's not really going to be a full load anyway, you know. So just keep that in mind, that you're going to need a lot of underwear. Any type of, like I said, a step stool, a toileting seat, anything that you need to have them not only access the toilet, but also the sink to wash their hands, have those things set up. I find that having a toileting schedule or a visual of that expectation when I work with my clients to be really helpful. At this point, it's not like we're necessarily looking for independence, but I think sometimes a visual is a helpful visual of like what's to come. So it's not necessarily a visual like you have to be able to do, you know, pull up and down your pants and sit and wipe and flush. If they don't do all of those things, that's perfectly fine at this stage. But I think it's helpful to kind of even show them what you're going to do next, right? Like, oh, look, you're sitting on the potty, and then we're going to wipe, and then I'm going to flush, you know. So just kind of getting them used to that routine. There's comfort in that routine. There's comfort in having the visuals of that routine. Same thing with this first then board, right? So first potty, then iPad, then toy train, then lollipop, whatever that ends up being. And in this bottom section here, that's like really, really small with a lot of different things going on. The takeaways that I liked for that was the salty snacks. So when we're working on the toilet training, we're trying to increase liquid intake. So salty snacks help with that. Your child may only drink water, and juice is like a hot commodity, and they don't get it all that often. But toilet training, we're going to let them drink the juice because they're going to drink a lot more of it if it's something they don't get very often. So letting them have that extra liquid intake and ensuring that they're going to drink that liquid is really helpful. And a timer. I feel very strongly about having an auditory timer, something that they can hear. It just starts that process of pairing that stimuli. So, right. So I hear that timer and they say, oh, I know that means I have to go potty. And that may not be all that necessary right now, but it will be absolutely vital if all of a sudden you're cooking dinner and that timer goes off and your child just pitter patters right over to the bathroom and you didn't have to tell them. And you're like, whew, I'm in the middle of cooking dinner. That was awesome that they knew to do that. So that could eventually happen if you start that pairing process early on in all of this exposure. And then the most important is all the good stuff, all the rewards, all the things that they get. Again, this isn't your decision. This is their decision. You may try a potty chart and you may spend a lot of money on a potty chart and they could care less about the potty chart. Don't spend a lot of money. Don't try to do anything super fancy. Try things that you already know works for your child. Try things that are new and exciting. Sometimes the treasure box in the back of the toilet, and it's just like like a surprise that they get to dig through it and they have no idea what could come. Sometimes they need to know exactly what it's going to be. So these are just some options. I thought that Potty Pops was super cute. But if your kid doesn't care about lollipops, it's not going to work. And I think the biggest key is it needs to be immediate. Keep the rewards in the bathroom. If by the time they go pee on the toilet and you go into the kitchen to get the cookies out of the cabinet to give them the cookies, they possibly have lost the association of why they're getting the cookies. The cookies stay in the bathroom. The bathroom is the fun place. The bathroom is the place you get the cookies. And the important thing is they only get the cookies for using the toilet. They no longer get the cookies any other time. So are you going to pick the thing that your kid has to have every single night after dinner? You're not going to do that. That's not nice. You're going to pick the thing that it's okay for you to remove. Are you going to have them use the iPad, which is something that you will inevitably give them because you need to make dinner or you're going to have a long ride in the car? Do not do the iPad, because this needs to be something that they only have access to for using the toilet. And the reason for that is, if you could get money from just walking down the street, from going out to dinner with your friends, from having a phone call, from cooking dinner, from going to work, if all of those natural opportunities you have is going to give you the same amount of money that you get from going to work, you're not going to go to work. You're going to say, I get just as much money cooking dinner for my family, and I have to do that anyway. I get just as much money taking my dog for a walk, and I was going to do that anyway, so I'm not going to go to work. So if we want to up the ante and make them want to use the bathroom, it has to be the only place they're going to get that super awesome thing. And honestly, the best rewards are self-terminating. So you had that piece of candy, you only got one. I want more. One M&M is nothing. I want another M&M and another M&M and another M&M. So you're going to want them to keep wanting that M&M. Sometimes things like a lollipop are actually challenging because of that, because the lollipop may take them 20 minutes to finish and you're already trying to get them back in the potty. And they say, but look, I still got my lollipop. I don't need another one. So all of these things I think are important to take into consideration based on where your child is at. And those tangible rewards work best for the beginning of toileting, right? So eventually a sticker chart may be fine, but you have to first establish and condition that those stickers hold value. So maybe in the beginning you say, every time you get an M&M, I'll give you a sticker. And then eventually those stickers are like, oh, when I get stickers, I get M&Ms. I really like stickers because they mean M&Ms. And so over time, they start to learn they also want the stickers. And then you could say, okay, now you need to get 5 stickers. And then you can have a package of M&Ms. But you have to start off with the M&Ms being the thing that are associated with the toilet. And always conduct a preference assessment before choosing what might work. And I know that I said this already, but I think it's very important. If they don't care enough about that thing to increase their behavior of sitting on the toilet, or they're like, Mommy, I want that M&M. And you're like, okay, let's go sit then. And they just kind of march on in and they sit on the toilet. You've got something now. You potentially have something that you can work with. Even if it's a Corvette, just let them have it. So this is kind of my own little anecdote, but I actually, and I know that I've used the term a lot because I think, toilet training is just one of those things that just colloquially just kind of comes out. But what I really like to make sure that we are considering is toilet exposure or learning before we get into toilet training. Because honestly, voiding on a toilet really can't be taught. You can't really tell somebody what it feels like or what they have to do to urinate on the toilet. Like, have you ever tried to teach someone how to blow their nose? Like, you can't articulate that. It's impossible. You can try to demonstrate it as much as you can and you look silly, and you really can't tell them what it feels like. Voiding on the toilet is the same. So during this exposure phase, you're really just looking to first just meet them where they're at, create a positive learning environment, and slowly work on incorporating the toilet into their routine. So establishing times of day that are easiest for that transition. So I always tell my families when they're starting, right before they take a bath, they're naked anyway, the toilet's right there, have them sit and they jump in the bath. Another good thing is when I worked in the childcare setting, anytime you're taking off their diaper to change their diaper, have them sit quick and then you put the diaper right back on. It's just something that you're going to stop their play anyway. They're already used to, oh, you got to put the iPad down, you got to stop playing, we got to change your diaper really quick. That transition is already happening. So take that opportunity to just add that extra step. And if you have an established reinforcer, they shouldn't mind. And you'll reinforce or you'll reward all of those attempts. So even if they're just sitting at that point, good job sitting, here's your M&M, right? You have a party for them. You sing the potty song, you do a little dance. You're really excited about them just sitting. And then if they go, because it happens, you'll catch them and you'll give them all the things, the whole jar of M&Ms. You'll have a big stash of things that you could just pull out and give to them. You'll have a potty parade around the house. I mean, just really make sure that you show them the difference. So again, so one of the reasons why I don't really like using that term necessarily toilet training is because it kind of, I think it has like an implied pressure. Like, it's like, oh, I'll just train you to do this and then it'll just be done, right? It's like training wheels. It's like a stepping stone and you use it for a short period of time and then you just take them off and they just kind of like figure it out, right? This is just so different than that because you really can't pressure it. It can't happen on our terms. We can't push it too quickly. So when to begin the intervention? So this is getting into the good stuff. So when they're consistently tolerating just using that timer. So it's absolutely no problem at all. They sit every time I change their diaper, or I'm using the timer maybe 3 times a day. And they're like, oh, I know what that means and let's go. Or at least they're willing to participate. They're willing to transition. If you say use the potty and they're not like, no, and they run the other way, maybe it's not time to start. Maybe we have to back up and again, meet them where they're at. So are they willing to walk to the bathroom? Are they willing to sit on the toilet without a diaper or pants on? Sometimes I start there. I say, they don't really want to sit. We'll have them sit with their clothes on. That's okay. Can they pull their pants up and down? Are they helping with washing their hands? Will they sit on the toilet for a minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds? Like, is it just like, they touch it and then they're just running away, or can you let them hang out there for a few minutes? Maybe read a book, maybe sing a song. Are they tolerating that part of it? Have they kind of accidentally voided? Maybe 3 to 5 times within that context. It's okay if they haven't, but it'll be more successful if they have. So if you can like hold out just a little bit longer on that exposure phase, that would be really cool too. So this is kind of like, let's move on, right? So are they transitioning? Do you have an established reinforcer? Are they tolerating sitting? Have they voided? Now we're going to increase the number of times that they're sitting to once every 1 to 2 hours. Now they're on, it's a regular interval and you're in a little bit more control over it. Start to get them using the timer. Again, we should be using that from the beginning, but now it's every hour. You're using that timer for you as much as you are for them. So you don't forget. So all of a sudden you're not caught up in something and you're like, oh, it's been an hour and a half. I should get going. You've established a bathroom routine. So we're working on pulling the pants up and down and sitting and washing hands. And maybe you read a book every time or you sing a song every time. Are they able to sit for 1 to 2 minutes each time? That's going to increase your success with them actually accidentally voiding. So if you're, you know, they're sitting and you always play the potty video or a song, or, you know, you read the potty book or maybe their favorite book, and you can kind of, you know, maybe when you first start reading it, you read it really fast. And then the story's over and they know they can get up, and then eventually you start to read it really slowly. where you point out pictures on the page, or you start to point out other details. And now suddenly your child is reading the same book during the same routine. And the first couple times it took like a minute, and now it's taking like 5 minutes to read the same book. It's a little bit of trickery because you're kind of, they know that when the book is over, they can get up, but you're elongating how long they're willing to tolerate sitting on the toilet. And they're distracted. There's more likelihood that they're going to be able to, oh, I just went. If they're only sitting for like 15 to 30 seconds, it's unlikely that they'll have accidentally voided in that time frame. So brace yourself, it's potty training time. So now this is it. This is the intervention. You're going to increase liquid intake. Diapers are gone. Potty training, toilet training will not necessarily be successful. I'm not going to say it will not, even though I feel pretty strongly about it, if they're in a diaper. The diaper is meant to wick away moisture. It's meant to keep them comfortable when they're wet. They are used to the feeling of their diaper being wet. They don't necessarily mind the feeling of their diaper being wet. They need to be in underwear. And I'm going to tell you this from my experience. Pull-ups are a diaper. Pull-ups wick it away just as much. They're more expensive. And the really only thing that's convenient about them is that you don't have to like break the tab to get them to pull it up every time. But if you're at the point where you've successfully gotten through the exposure phase, this intervention really requires underwear. And you're going to start with a 15-minute interval. This is why I had several slides with be ready for this, because 15 minutes goes by really fast and you're not doing much of anything else once you're toilet training at 15-minute intervals. But it's vital for success. It is vital for increasing that liquid intake and getting them to sit and void and really start to make that association. Again, at this point, it's probably accidental. If they're doing it on purpose, fantastic. But they may not be. They really may not know what it feels like to empty their bladder and truly relax and do that purposefully. But you're going to create the perfect storm of lots of liquid, underwear, where then maybe it starts to come out and they realize that they're wet and they kind of hold it again, and 15-minute intervals. So you're going to be sending them so often, it will come out in the toilet. It has to come out in the toilet. They can't hold it that much every 15 minutes. Again, assuming that they're not afraid of the toilet or they're not holding their urine or their bowels. That's where consulting with a pediatrician is where we kind of would lead that to. If they're fearful or whatever, that's a whole nother story. And then once you're successful at 15-minute intervals, then you start to kind of pull back a little bit. They have a feeling, they know what it feels like to go on the toilet every 15 minutes. And if all goes well, they're starting to have dry patterns, right? Where their underwear isn't getting wet because they're going on the toilet. And so they start to feel what it feels like to be dry. You're kind of breaking that cycle that they're remembering, I used to pee in the diaper and now I know what it feels like to be dry. Now, if they have an accident in that underwear, it's now going to feel foreign, but it wouldn't have necessarily felt foreign if you were going straight from diapers to underwear. It still could have, but you're kind of breaking that cycle a little bit. So now you're going to 30-minute intervals and you're trying it, right? If they're having accidents every 30 minutes, now we're kind of looking at, okay, when did they have that liquid? How long after they had that liquid did they have an accident? Is it 5 minutes after they have something to drink? It all comes out. All right, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to give them something to drink and I'm going to put them on the toilet right away and they're going to go. And then after they go, maybe they can go 30 minutes because they didn't really have all that much to drink after that. So you're going to start to recognize those patterns with your child. And so you'll eventually go from 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, because again, they're going to be learning how to hold their bladders during that period of time. They're going to know what it feels like to have a big cup of juice and empty their bladder in the toilet. And what I feel is very helpful, and a lot of parents have felt this is very helpful, is keeping track of that. Believe it or not, there will be a pattern. It's just not a pattern you would have seen in a diaper or a pull-up, because again, it wicks it away. And so now you have an opportunity to, and honestly, some people don't even use the underwear. Maybe they just let their kids run around naked. Maybe that works too. There's nothing wrong with that. That works perfectly fine too. And then you start to kind of see, okay, I gave them a drink at, 2 p.m. and at 2:15 they peed. And that seems to happen every time I do that. You'll start to notice that there are patterns, because the way our body operates, the biology of the way our body operates, does have a pattern, whether we're trying to or not, right? How liquid moves through our body is not really in any of our control. So these are just some examples. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, super technical. It could just be a scrap piece of paper. Just as long as you can go back and you can reference that, it will give you information. Be patient. It takes time. You may want to give up, because every 15 minutes is taxing. It's exhausting. You're going to live in the bathroom. Have things in there for yourself. Your kid's going to look at books, have some magazines in there, put some snacks in there. You're going to spend a lot of time in the bathroom. Notice dad is sitting on the floor, getting comfortable. It will happen. There is, again, unless we've ruled out medical, there is no reason that your child cannot be successfully toilet trained. You just have to be confident in yourself and what you're doing, that it will work. It just takes time. And so you're at the point now, you can go every hour. It's pretty regular. I will say, and I don't know that I noted this anywhere, but it's not a requirement. However, I do think it's helpful throughout the process when you're working on those transitions to the toilet. Start providing your child a way to communicate that they're going to use the bathroom throughout the whole process. So maybe it's, okay, we're going to go use the potty now. And you take their AAC device and it says, I want bathroom. And then you go. Or maybe there's a PEX icon on the outside of the bathroom door. And so you get to the bathroom door and they hand it to you and you say, oh, you got to go to the bathroom. Okay, let's go. Maybe your child just eventually learns to just run in there when they know they got to go, and they do the whole thing and they don't need to tell you. Whatever it is that your child is going to need to communicate, start that pairing process in the beginning. Use that auditory timer from the beginning. So eventually, if you're like, okay, they're doing pretty good, they can go about every hour. Set that timer, let them do their thing. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to remember. As soon as they get out of the bathroom and you're giving them their reward, you will reset the timer again, so you don't forget to do it. And then the timer will go off and you'll say, oh, there it is again. I guess they got to go. And you'll just start that all over again. So this is the generalization part where you're no longer necessarily having to govern the transition to the bathroom. Make sure from the beginning, you encourage them to use all of the bathrooms in your home. So it doesn't have to just be the one that's on the main level right next to the living room. It's mommy's master bathroom. It's the one that's in the playroom in the basement. It's, we go to grandma's house and it's grandma's bathroom. And, I'm going to go to the store. This happens a lot. I've worked with so many families where they would say, oh, well, we went to New York for the weekend, so we put them in pull-ups. But they've been successful for a year. Don't do that to them. don't give up on them. They can do it. They're going to have to learn to do that. Will it be inconvenient for you? Probably. It probably will. But that's what they need from you, is to have confidence in them, to know that they can use the bathroom wherever they go. Bring the timer, put it in your pocket, set the timer on your phone. They need you to be consistent for them in order for them to learn that toileting doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen just at home. This is the rest of their life. And they're going to need to be able to use bathrooms wherever they go for their life. As you begin to see them successful with sitting frequently and going, and you'll have patterns, will they'll be dry, start to see, like, can they go 2 hours? Do I need to use the timer anymore? Are they pretty much telling me that they have to go? All of a sudden you'll be, on the phone and Johnny starts scurrying to the bathroom and you're like, oh, I guess he knew he had to go. You'll know when to pull back. You'll know when you don't need to kind of be on that regular schedule anymore. And about the same time where that happens, you won't necessarily need to reinforce every single attempt anymore. That's kind of where that like delayed reinforcement, like that sticker chart, may come into play, where, every time they go to the bathroom, they're getting an M&M. They know that system, it works really well. And you're like, look, you've been doing a great job. Like now, let's make sure that you can go potty. Like you'll get a sticker every time. Like I did a balloon at, when I was a preschool teacher, and I had like a balloon on the bathroom door, and they got stickers in the balloon. And as soon as all the stickers were filled up in the balloon, they got to look in treasure box or whatever that may be. Maybe it's a bigger gift than that, like maybe they go pee on the potty every day for a month or a week, and you take them to the toy store and you say, buy what you want. Here's your limit. Like that's okay too. So again, it's individualized. It's whatever works for your child. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to that. But just this, it's like a very common thing that I hear. Like, what am I just supposed to like give them an M&M for going and pee on the potty forever? Well, no. But you'll believe it or not, there becomes a time where they don't even look for it anymore, because they just have learned that this is the rule. At some point, habits become a rule and you don't have to think about it anymore. I'm sure most of you at some point were reinforced or rewarded for going potty. And I would bet that you all don't need that anymore. It just happens. So trust it, it will happen. And if initiations are not occurring independently, just pair those scheduled sits with a model of, I need to go potty, use the potty visual, have them touch the card, just start to make that association. And I said that before, but I think that that's, just keep making that paired association. Having them request is not a prerequisite, as long as they're able to indicate to you that they need to go, whether that means they walk to the bathroom themselves or they use some type of communication. And ultimately, as long as praise and social reinforcement have been paired along the process, so meaning like every time you give them their M&M or their potty pop, it's, you did it, you went pee-pee on the potty, that's so exciting. Eventually, that will be enough. That will be enough. You are the most reinforcing person to your child in the entire world. You are their cheerleader for life. They will do things just to make you proud. They will. They will. And it will work. So I know that when I first talked with Crystal and Rachel about this workshop, there were a lot of, there was a reason why we were looking to present a workshop with this. So I know that there's a lot of questions that come. I'm sure you all have some questions that have arisen just because you know your own child, or things that you've experienced before. I may not have all of the answers. I will try my best to answer what those questions are. Some questions and concerns that were brought up, and I hope I covered some of them. Starting with regular or potty training potties. If generalization is an issue for your child, meaning sameness and learning things in a very same contrived situation. If that is challenging for your child, I would recommend from the beginning to work on having them toilet in the exact location with the exact materials that are going to need to be used. If that's not an issue, and if your child doesn't necessarily have an issue, understanding that the small potty and the potty in the living room, or the potty next to the living room, or in this bathroom, if they don't have any difficulty understanding and generalizing skills in different environments, I think that starting with the toilet training potty is fine. Again, I don't necessarily have a lot of research on the efficacy of one versus the other. I do think that it's all child specific. I will say, however, the tendency with toilet training seats that can be removed from the bathroom is people tend to put them in the middle of the living room where their child is normally playing. And again, I don't necessarily think if in the exposure process, that's kind of like the least aversive way of getting your child to sit on the toilet, I don't necessarily know if there's anything wrong with that. However, knowing your individual child, is it then going to become problematic when that toilet is eventually in the bathroom? Are they no longer going to use that bathroom or that toilet because it's not in front of their TV near all of their toys? If you know your child and you know that's the case, don't start there from the beginning. Work on that transition when it's easy, not at the end when it gets hard. When it gets hard at the end is now they're in underwear, now they have to wash their hands every single time. It's a much farther transition to go from the living room all the way to the bathroom over here. If you need to take longer in the exposure phase to work on having them transition from the living room to the bathroom, take that time rather than kind of making it easy for them and then making it harder for them later on, if that makes sense. What to do about BM holding? This is very challenging because there is there's no common reason for every child why BM holding happens. Does your child have issues with constipation? Have they engaged in BM holding with a diaper? Are they currently medicated for constipation? Do they have a very limited diet and that's the reason why they're BM holding? Is it painful for them to make a BM? Is that why they're holding it? All of those things I don't think that I can truly answer. I always will say, consult your pediatrician. If you are to start, if there was never a history of BM holding and you start toilet training and BM holding happens, consult your clinical team, speak to your pediatrician. That indicates to me a need to back up, that your child either isn't ready, there's some type of anxiety associated with this toileting. The intention of any of these strategies is not to create a medical issue. If at any point there's a medical issue, you need to pause, you need to halt. That is first and foremost the safety and well-being of the child. Consult your clinical team, consult your pediatrician individually for your child. I've touched on this before, underwear versus diapers versus pull-ups. You know my opinion on that. I don't have any opinion necessarily underwear versus running around with them naked. But once you are at that point of toilet training every 15 minutes, underwear, no diapers. If in the exposure phase, you move from diapers to pull-ups just because it's easier for them to pull it up and down and sit on the potty, do that. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, pull-ups are expensive. So I'm not saying that that's necessary. Your child doesn't have to have expensive pull-ups to be toilet trained. What do I do if nothing is a strong enough reinforcer to get them to urinate on the toilet? And I would argue that there is, but they likely already have access to it. there is something in your child's environment that they have already that they love. And what this means, which it's not always the most parent-friendly option, but what this means is withholding that and only making that available for the toilet. So I often use this example of like when you, and this is the same with teaching speech, which with teaching a lot of things. If your child has an enriched environment and they have free access to reinforcing things, their motivation to engage in any type of demand, any type of adult directed anything is slightly diminished because they are living pretty much in a state of satiation, right? Like they have free access to the things that they want. And so what is the motivation to put forth an effort to gain those things? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having your child live in an enriched environment, but it does become more challenging to find things that they're willing to work for if they have free access to those things. Again, filthy rich people aren't like necessarily like mowing lawns to get a $20, right? Like they're not going to do that. But if you're in a state of deprivation from money, you'll do just about anything to get that, right? So I think that that's something that we don't necessarily notice as much. There's always something in a child's environment that they want. We just have to kind of break that apart and find out what that is. And I've done a lot of like formal preference assessments where sometimes it's like something sensory, or maybe it's something that you make, you know, like maybe it's maybe they want you to pull out the instruments and like put a party hat on and like do a parade around the house. And like, that's not something you've ever done before. Like, but your kid loves a hoopla, right? Like you're like, well, he gets really excited at birthday parties and like super excited with parades. And it's like, all right, well, if nothing else works, but he likes a parade, like you're going to have a parade. So there's definitely something, it just may need to be contrived. When to work on BM on the toilet, it comes secondary. Until your child, and I'm not saying it can't happen. I've certainly had children who have just kind of like, oh, there it is. And like, as part of that toilet training or exposure phase, and you caught them at the right time and you have a party. So it certainly can happen. For some kids, it just clicks. With others, it comes secondary, and you're going to wait until urinating happens regularly. And you're going to start to notice bowel patterns. So like, oh, every day, like, you know, and your child may already have those bowel patterns. So it's like every day, 2:00, like clockwork, every day, 6:30, right after dinner, like clockwork, and you're going to sit them. You're going to sit them during that time. The key here is if they're not going to make a BM because they're in underwear and they're going to hold it, you may put the diaper or the pull-up on them so they can void in the pull-up or diaper for their BM. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we are not trying to cause a medical issue because they are holding it and refusing to go in the toilet. For some children, that's very difficult. And so what I would suggest with that is if every day Johnny goes poop at 6:30, you're going to say, Johnny, let's go in the bathroom. Here's your video. Here's your iPad. That's what Johnny always does when he poops. He grabs his iPad and he goes into his room and he hangs out in there. He watches, you know, Blippi, and he poops. You're going to let all of the stars align for him. You're going to give him Blippi on the iPad in his diaper, but you're going to do it in the bathroom. You're going to leave him alone. And you're going to give him 10 minutes, half hour, however long Johnny usually needs. You're going to let him do his thing in the bathroom. And then when that's successful, you're going to try having them sit on the toilet with Blippi on the iPad in the diaper, but on the toilet. And you're going to slowly start to associate the expectation with little Johnny with that BM, but it's going to be very slow. And when eventually they void in their diaper, you're going to take it, you're going to put it in the toilet, and they're going to flush it down the toilet. And they're going to see that the poop goes in the toilet. And if they start holding it again because they don't want to go in the bathroom again, you're going to have to consult your clinical team, because holding BMs can be very serious. And this is something that, for whatever reason, some children really have a hard time with it. Whether it's, Freudian, whatever you want to believe, or it's just, again, maybe they've associated making a BM with pain. And so having it in the comfort of their diaper is helpful for them. Whatever that may be, it's going to need to be individualized to your child, consulting with your clinical team and your pediatrician to make sure that this is not aversive. And then even more secondary than BM training is nighttime training. And this is a very difficult subject because all of the things that I've mentioned about, as a parent, are you ready, is like heightened by 100 when it comes to nighttime training. Because as parents, we're exhausted. And having your child sleep at night is sometimes very challenging. Some children need medication to sleep. Some children need melatonin to sleep. Some children are sleeping very heavily due to their medication and they just cannot wake up in the middle of the night. Their body biologically is not waking to use the toilet. Sometimes, they'll only sleep 4-hour increments. And so you're awake from 2 a.m. for your entire day. And so are you going to spend the 4 hours of sleep that you're getting or that your child's getting working on having them toilet at night? Maybe not. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You're surviving, you're functioning. That's fine. So I think it has a lot to do with your individual situation, how deep your child is sleeping. If all of the stars align and you say, I'm well rested, my kid's a great sleeper, they don't need medication, they just aren't waking up in the middle of the night. But they're not a super sound sleeper, they just don't recognize that they need to do it. Are they ever waking up dry in the morning? Are they waking up just absolutely soaked in the morning? So a lot of things are factors when it comes to that. If they're absolutely soaked in their pull-up or their diaper in the morning, when did their liquid intake stop? Did it stop at 6:30 and their bedtime's 8? Maybe you need to stop their liquid intake earlier. Maybe you need to make sure that they go right before they get into their bed. So it has a lot to do with what that individual situation for your child looks like. And then at that point, are you prepared to wake up in the middle of the night at regular intervals and take them to the bathroom? So you may start at 2 a.m. Okay, they're dry. 2 a.m. is going to work. They're going to get up, they're going to go, and they make it until 7. Perfect. Maybe you go in there at 2 a.m. and they're wet. And you're going to say, okay, I need to go in at 11. I need to wake them up at 11. I need to wake them up at 3. And then we're going to get up at 7. I hate to say it, but that is probably maybe the only way, unless they're regulated enough during the day where their body regulates naturally at night. It is possible. But it is all individualized with your child and their sleep and their body and what their body is biologically going to do. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to do that forever. You just need to get their body to biologically recognize that getting up, using the bathroom, and going back to sleep is something that they're going to need to do. And I'm not saying that because, my daughter is 3.5 and she's not like, she still wakes up soaked in the morning. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not prepared to wake up in the middle of the night and take her. So I'm not going to. And maybe she'll get it when she's 5. You know, like I've accepted that as a parent, that that's not what my priority is right now. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So just know, if that is your priority, that it takes as much preparation to get there as the beginning steps. That's all I have. I hope I answered some of your questions, but I'm definitely open to more. You're up.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Very informative. And I have to laugh too, because you were talking back a little bit about not taking the potty into different rooms. And I just kept thinking about when I was potty training my children, we used to actually take it, like if we went in the truck to go to like a park or something, we would actually keep that little potty in the back of the truck for them to use. But in our case, my child was kind of obsessed with potties, so it worked for them. It was an interesting thing, and it worked for them. But I
have one in my trunk.
Yes.
Because I have a little girl, and when you're at the park, she won't go in a porta potty. She won't do it.
Yeah.
So I bring it along, because sometimes you're in a park, you have nowhere else to go, or there's been times where you're on the highway and she suddenly has to go. There's nowhere for me to stop. So my little potty training seat lives in my trunk, and it works for us.
It was keeping that consistency. Yep. And then my other son, who has a more significant degree of autism, it's funny, you were talking about taking the BM into the toilet and dropping it. Well, we got a little too literal with that, I think, and he got to a point where he was actually bringing it to me to bring to the toilet. So I mean, we looked at it as progress, because he was learning that it needed to go somewhere. But it was interesting.
I would take that as an interesting win.
We have a couple of questions, just if we can start off with in the chat, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
We have a question that says, can you put a pull-up on over the underwear so they still feel wet, but they don't have as much of a mess to clean up, or is that too hard to manage?
I have done that before. It is still possible. It depends. Like if you have a child who has like a real sensory aversion, so like if all of a sudden that, you know, that pee kind of like running down their leg or whatever like that is really going to send them into like a tailspin. I think that could be okay. There is definitely still a wicking away of the urine that happens with a pull-up over the underwear. They do make training underwear that is much thicker, and it does catch it better, but still giving them the same soiled feeling, and it does tend to make a little bit less of a mess. But I do still think that there is some value in them kind of understanding that level of like discomfort, like kind of like looking down, like there's a puddle, my leg is wet. Like you do kind of want them, and it's not supposed to be aversive, but you do kind of want them to make an association with like, this is a little bit uncomfortable. I think I should do this somewhere else. Maybe there's a better place for this to go. So I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with doing it that way, but I would say if you're doing it, if you're using the pull-up at that stage, and you find, I would just monitor your child's progression with the intervention phase. Like, are they still successfully going, or are you noticing those accidents more often? If there's not a reduction in the number of accidents that they're having in their underwear or their pull-up, even though they're going every 15 minutes, and if they're not voiding on the toilet, I think I would be more reserved with using that pull-up.
Great, thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
We also have someone who asks, basically, is it counterintuitive to use a diaper at night if you're using, if you're regulating during the daytime with underwear?
I don't think so. And again, this is just my experience and my opinion, but I don't really think it's fair to put them in underwear at night if they're going to wake up completely soiled. Like, our goal here is not to have your child trying to sleep in their urine. If this is something that you think your child's gonna go and like wake up and realize like, oh wait, I went and I need to be changed, and maybe, you know, they have enough awareness of their body that they're going to start to hold it or wake up in the middle of the night, then go for it. But I think the biggest challenge, at least from my experience that I've seen with nighttime toileting, is that children just genuinely are not waking or not recognizing that they have to go. And then at that point, like, is it really fair not to set them up for success in that moment? And success meaning to sleep. Like, sleep is primary in that case to toileting. And that's where you're kind of developmentally, environmentally, you're taking all of those things in your child's life into consideration. And so during the day, maybe you're saying, well, my priority right now is toileting. But at night, maybe you're saying my priority is my child needs to sleep. I'm already medicating them for sleep. I need to sleep. So it's okay for your priority to shift because the time of day is different, if that makes sense. Because you're functioning and you're surviving and you're living, and that's okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. If anyone would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand, and Rachel and I will look around and see who has a question, and you can unmute. Anybody?
I know I didn't answer all of your questions.
No questions? Since there's not a huge, oh, somebody's saying, how about flushing the toilet? I assume that must have something to do with sensitivities with flushing the toilet.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, I guess it depends. Yeah, is your child afraid of having them flush the toilet? Okay, they think it's fun. So yeah, you could use that as a reinforcer, a potential reinforcer, and say like, all right, you got to put your pee-pee in there so we can flush. You can say goodbye to the pee-pee. That may be one of your intrinsic motivators, like you don't get to flush it unless you pee. But again, that could be something that you use during the exposure phase to get them into the bathroom, right? So you may say like, okay, we got to go flush the toilet. Come on, come with me. We got to go. We got to sit. And then they don't get to flush it until they're done sitting for that 1 minute interval or whatever. So you definitely, if that's something that they're motivated by, that's already in the bathroom, like, yeah, use it to your advantage for sure.
Mary Lucy, I see that you have your hand up. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so my son's 5 and he has cerebral palsy. And so my struggle is, you know, he wants to be independent, but physically can't be. So, you know, he can't put himself on the potty or pull down his pants or do anything that. So it's discouraging to him, which is then discouraging to me. And I kind of give up. Like, any just advice on like how to encourage him? Like, I know I need to stay positive, but like how to encourage him, because he's at the point where we did like the 15-minute intervals just to find out if potentially he was incontinent. And that was just a nightmare, just screaming, yelling, just it was discouraging altogether. And then now he's at the point where like he knows, we know he can do it because he knows. But even wanting to change his diaper, he screams when we have to change his diaper, but he tells me he has poop in it. But like from an like, I just don't like, how do you encourage me and him, I guess, at the same time? Like, I'm just struggling with, because even in the middle of the night, if we get there, like in the middle of the night, he can't go without me.
Right. Right. And that's okay. I mean, like, I think that's kind of where when I was speaking about the physical, you know, aspects, like if there's a physical disability and he needs you to regulate that for him, I think first is kind of like establishing what each of your role is in that opportunity, right? In that situation. So he's going to indicate that he needs to go. He recognizes that he needs to go, but maybe he's sensing some anxiety or some, whatever it is. Maybe, you know, like you said, you're kind of unsure of like what you need to do. It seems to be a little bit aversive. So maybe kind of like restarting and saying like, what is it about this transition? I mean, it sounds like he's able to express to you kind of how he feels about the situation. So maybe kind of backing up and reevaluating, reconditioning the context, setting up the situation for success. Was there or is there a potential reinforcer or reward that was established? I feel like that's the common reason why there are setbacks.
Yeah, that's a good point, because my reinforcer was M&Ms, but he also gets the M&Ms when he goes in his robot. So,
yeah. And so I think that's tough, right? So like it may be aversive because it's not, well, that's not a reason why it would be aversive, but it would be a reason why it's not motivating.
Right.
And so he's saying he wants to do these things, but maybe he's kind of thinking like, well, what am I getting out of it? And sometimes, so maybe the M&Ms are motivating for the robot, but not for something like this.
Right.
And that does happen too, where you have a really great established reinforcer that maybe is not enough for a situation that is difficult, and it's going to be difficult. Yeah. I think kind of navigating how he's physically handled in that situation too. So maybe having a conversation or establishing some type of routine where, I don't know, and I don't know him or the situation, but like, is there an associated, shame, or is there an associated, like, does he feel like he has like a burden, right? Like, is he feeling frustrated by the fact that you have to physically intervene? Some of this may just be him coping with his physical disability.
Yeah. It's a little bit is definitely that, because he wants, I want to do it. And
he can't.
Right.
Okay. And so I think some of that is bigger than this.
Yes.
And I think that aspect of it probably needs to be addressed first. And I'm not saying that you haven't, but whatever kind of conversation that needs to be had. And like, there are some social stories, or maybe like a book about it, something to that effect, of just kind of being able to say like, I'm here to help you. It's okay that I'm helping you, but I need you to tell me what you need from me in this moment. Maybe the fact that he's a boy and he doesn't want his mom helping him. Like, there could be so many things, like there's so many things associated with that. And he may not even understand how to articulate that to you, but it definitely sounds like the bigger barrier here is not necessarily the toilet alone.
Yeah.
And I think before kind of going down this road, those other things might need to be kind of ironed out a little bit first.
Okay. And then like age wise, because he's 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, well, maybe as he gets the ability to be able to eventually pull down his pants as he gets older, but is it too late to wait that long? Like 7 years old? Well,
and this is where that like pressure as a parent comes into play, right? Is like, the chronological age, and like we're, time's ticking, and is there some parental shame associated with like, am I doing something wrong because I haven't done this by now, or whatever. I think it's a conversation probably to have. I mean, I'm assuming he's got like a physical therapist or somebody who's working with him.
Oh yeah, plenty.
Yeah. So, right. So maybe having a conversation with this clinical team and saying like, okay, well, there are some things that we're working on as far as this PT is concerned, but, developmentally and mentally, I think he's ready for this. And I'm concerned about, causing any kind of like, issues with his psyche or his,
right. Yeah.
So maybe you have a conversation with them and say, I need to prioritize the steps that need to be taken with him pulling his pants up and down or getting into the bathroom himself. Can the physical therapy team kind of hold on maybe some of the other things that they're working on and prioritize this right now?
Okay. Yeah. And they will. I have to be, to your point, I have to be ready for this.
You have to be ready.
But I know that he's ready.
And he needs to be ready. And maybe he needs to be part of that conversation with your PT team of making sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody wants the same thing and everybody knows what their role is to get them there.
Okay. Thank you very much. This
Yeah.
was great. Appreciate
problem.
this. Thank you.
We have another hand raised. Jess, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Go ahead.
Hi, Ashley, this was awesome. I don't know if you can hear me sometimes.
It's quiet, but I just turned my volume up. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you because this has been very informative and very helpful.
Good.
So I have twin boys who are premature, so they're developmentally delayed. One of my sons has CP, but we're not there yet. Chronologically, he's not ready, but his twin is, but he has some severe speech delay. So
Okay.
we've been in the exposure toileting for probably for a while. And what I'm finding with him is that he is nervous. There's some anxiety with actually voiding into the toilet. Like he has no problem sitting for the reward. He totally gets it. He actually will run in his underwear and pee next to the little potty. So he gets it, but it's like, we're still kind of at that. And I'm trying to be really positive and really like, you know, like, yay, you got so close. Maybe next time we could actually go in the potty. So I didn't know if you had any advice on how to kind of encourage that a little bit more. You know, because he'll sit and he'll sit and he'll sit and then he just gets up and goes where he wants.
Okay. How old is he?
He is 3.5. He'll be 4 in May.
Okay. So there are some things that I've tried to make, so again, you're in the exposure phase. It depends on how consistently he's like purposefully voiding kind of next to the toilet. So I would say like every single time he's getting up from the toilet and like going right next to it, versus kind of like he happened to have gone next to the toilet a couple times. So I think there's a little bit of a difference as far as that's concerned, you know, as far as like how ready he is for the next step. But a couple things that I've tried, and again, there's not necessarily any research supporting like the effectiveness of whatever, but I've seen it work. Couple things. They make these toilet targets, and they're basically like tissue paper animals. Like I get them on Amazon. There's also like toilet tablets, like very similar to like bath tablets, where like you say it's like a blue tablet and then you pee on it and the water turns green, and it's like super exciting to kind of like see the change in color. Or if he's a little boy and he likes target practice, they actually make like little targets that go in the toilet. I've used that sometimes to help little boys with aim, because little boys do not aim. And so also there's like a Cheerio trick where like you throw Cheerios in there and they get to like aim at those. So maybe it could be something like, okay, we got to go pee pee on the, you know, maybe the actual peeing on the toilet isn't reinforcing. The other thing is if you've been at the exposure phase for a really long time and he's been reinforced for the sitting part of it, there might need to be a version where like you have to up the ante for him voiding. Okay. So, you know, I'm going to give you one M&M, but you get this whole bag of M&Ms when you pee pee in the potty. Or, you know, maybe now he's been at the exposure phase for so long that you just get a sticker for sitting, but you get the M&M for peeing. And that's okay to change up the game if you feel like he's ready for the next step and he's kind of holding out on you. So kind of reevaluating what that reinforcer is. It's also possible the M&M, like I said before, I forgot what the example was, but it's possible that the M&M isn't reinforcing enough to pee on the toilet. Mm-hmm. So it's reinforcing enough to get me to sit. It's what we call like response effort. So like, you know, I'm willing to mow the lawn for $20, but I'm not willing to, you know, shovel your whole driveway by hand, you know, and mow the lawn and do this and do that for $20. So it's like the amount of effort that he has to put forth to do that may not be enough for him to get one M&M. But I don't mind sitting for an M&M. I'm just not going to pee for one. So I
No,
think
yeah, that's
this,
good.
the success
point.
sometimes has a lot to do with, like, if you ever feel like you're in a bind, and this goes for everybody with, well, this was working, but it's not working anymore. Most of the time, reevaluating what that reward is or that reinforcer is often going to be the answer. Sometimes they're just like, well, I've been getting M&Ms like consistently for like 6 months. They're not really special anymore. So you might need to, like, okay, now it's going to be chocolate chips. Maybe now it's going to be a Kit Kat bar. Maybe now it's going to be an Oreo cookie, you know, like you might need to have them have a choice.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's like these little mini marshmallows, and it's actually funny. Like he'll point to it first and then go sit down. Like he knows that he's gonna get that marshmallow if he sits. So I'm laughing. So you're right. It probably is, time to up the ante to get. And I
Yeah.
do have those little potty target things. It just he's just kind of like I could tell, like he's just like, yeah, I'm good. I sat. Let me get up. Like he almost doesn't want the pee to come out, but he'll hold it until. Yeah, I've tried the book reading thing. I've sat in that bathroom for like 20, 30 minutes. He held out on me. And I'm like, you can hold it. Please, Void.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've also done the trick where like you run the faucet. I've also, if you pour a
Mhm.
little bit of warm water over them, sometimes that helps. You got to kind of stick it out until you break that cycle of them being like, oh, that's all it is. Oh, it's fine. I'm not scared. But it's true, like
Mhm.
getting to that point where they're willing to relinquish that, whatever, whether it's control or whether it's fear or anxiety, like I agree, you have to get to that point where they're willing to allow that to happen. And that's the hardest
Great.
part.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
no problem.
no, but we're staying positive and just
Good luck.
praising him as much as we can. But yeah, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from anybody? We have a lot of people saying in the chat, Ashley, it was a great workshop. Thank you for all of the information.
Okay.
Thank you, very helpful and appreciated. A lot of people saying thank you.
I was like, there's 12 more questions. Oh my gosh.
a lot of, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And if ever anybody else has questions, you can always reach out to me individually, email, my work phone. If there's anything you didn't really feel comfortable saying, being recorded or whatever, you can reach out. Again, I don't know if I can give you specific advice, but I can try.
I don't, Ashley, someone's asking us for the PowerPoint, and I think that what we mentioned was we're going to stick with the recording because everything is available on the recording, and Rachel and I are both very happy to send that recording link to you as soon as that it's up. Great. I'm glad it's okay. She said it's fine. I also wanted to let everybody know that I put myself and Rachel's email address in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, any family support needs, feel free to reach out to us. If you need us to forward information to Ashley, that's fine as well too. We can certainly do that. And I'm so glad everybody joined us. I hope that when you receive the survey, you will let us know how much you loved it on the survey, and also fill that out and get it back to us. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Thank
Hope
you.
everybody has a great night. Thank you so much.